All right, let's just jump right in. Underneath everything we do, our jobs, our families, all the day-to-day stuff, there's this one huge question that's always kind of lurking there. It's all about identity. Yeah, that question right there. Who am I really? We've all asked it, right? Well, according to pastor and author Yunissim Ali Bey, this isn't just some abstract philosophical thing. She says it's one of the most vital, most personal struggles we go through. And in her new book, I Am, she offers an answer that might just turn everything on its head. So the whole idea of the book is this massive shift in how we think about it. It says, look, we spend our entire lives trying to build an identity, right? We piece it together from our career, our achievements, even our mess-ups. But here's the kicker. What if your true identity isn't something you have to create at all? What if it's already there, just waiting for you to find it? And let's be honest, we all do this. We look outside ourselves for the answers. The book really hones in on how we tend to grab onto these external labels to tell us who we are. The problem is, those labels can make our sense of self incredibly fragile, always changing. I mean, just think about it. We say, I'm a manager, I'm a mom, I'm a great student, or maybe even I'm the person who messed that up. But what happens when the job disappears, when the kids grow up, when our reputation changes? The book makes a great point. Building your identity on things that can just vanish, that's like trying to build a house on quicksand. Okay, so if building an identity is the wrong approach, then what is the alternative? Well, this is where the book proposes that huge shift I mentioned. Instead of construction, think discovery. The idea is to find an identity that's already there, something solid and permanent. This line right here is really the heart of the whole thing. It's from the foreword. Your identity isn't some project you have to stress over. It's a truth that you just uncover. Which obviously leads to the million-dollar question. So where do you find it? The author has this brilliant analogy to explain it. A passport. Think about it. When you travel, your passport is everything. It defines who you are, it gives you rights and privileges just based on your citizenship. It doesn't matter if you're having a bad day or what your job is back home. That citizenship is a foundational identity that doesn't change no matter where you are or what you're doing. So this citizenship, this core identity, the book argues that it comes from our Creator. It connects this whole idea back to the story of Moses in the Bible. When God reveals his own name, his own identity as I Am. The point is, to figure out who you are, you have to start with the one who made you. Your identity is wrapped up in his. Okay, to make this really practical, the book breaks it down into this idea that we're all living with two identities at the same time, our earthly one and our heavenly one. And there's no better story to illustrate this than the story of Job. So, look at Job. On earth, his identity was all about his circumstances, right? Wealthy guy, father of 10, the greatest men in the East. But when all that was stripped away, his earthly identity just fell apart. He became poor, sick, a totally different person. But, and this is the key, in heaven, God's perspective on him never changed, not once. He was still my servant Job, blameless, a man who fears God, loved. You see the difference? The earthly identity was so fragile, but the heavenly one, rock solid. So, which one is your real identity? The book is pretty clear. It's the one God gives you. This all comes down to the idea of being an imago Dei. That's just a fancy way of saying an image bearer of God. That is your core, unshakable identity. It completely shifts the focus from what do I do to whose am I? Okay, so knowing this stuff is one thing. Actually living it, that's a whole different ballgame. And this is where the book gets super practical. It talks about the daily fight to believe this stuff, to live from this discovered identity. And it says that fight happens in one very specific place, just one. The author says there is one primary battlefield where this whole fight for your identity is either won or lost. It's not out in the world, not in your career or your social life, it's in your mind. The argument is that everything depends, not on what's happening to you, but on the thoughts you decide to believe about you. And according to the book, there's a clear strategy used against you. The enemy's whole game plan is to give you a case of mistaken identity. How? By planting thoughts, little seeds of doubt, fear, and insecurity. The goal is to make you forget who God says you are and get you to focus on all your flaws, your past mistakes, basically anything but the truth.
So if the battle is in our minds, how in the world do we fight back? Well, the book lays out a really clear, powerful strategy for defending your identity. And the model for this defense? It's taken straight from Jesus himself during his temptation in the desert.
These two words, "It is written." The book presents this simple phrase as the ultimate weapon. Think about it. When Jesus was confronted with lies about who he was, he didn't get into a debate. He didn't try to argue from his feelings. He didn't even do a miracle to prove a point. He just stood on the authority of what was already written. And this is broken down into a super practical 3-step defense that anyone can use. So, step 1, the identity challenge. This is when not thought pops into your head, you know, the one that starts with, "If you were really a good person," or "If you were really forgiven." Step 2, the scriptural response. You don't fight that feeling with another feeling, you counter it with, "It is written," and you bring in the truth. And step 3, the victorious result. The truth of Scripture always beats the lie. The book frames this as something you can do every single day. But a good defense is only half the battle, right? The final section of the book is all about moving to offense. It's not just about defending against attacks, it's about proactively, intentionally, reinforcing who you are.
The author uses this great phrase. She says faith is voice activated. The idea is that actually speaking God's truth and his promises out loud is an incredibly powerful way to make it real in your own mind and spirit. It's kind of like you're programming your own brain with the truth on purpose. And the last chapter is packed with these declarations, all straight from Scripture. They're simple but so powerful. Things like, "I am a child of God. I am created in the image of God. I am a new creation." The whole point is to actively replace the lies that pop into your head with the truth of who God says you are, and to do it out loud.
Which really brings us back to the core question of this whole explainer. It's a big one. If you stop defining yourself by what you do, by your successes and failures, by your past, and instead you fully 100% believe the identity that this book says God has already given you, who would you be then? What would actually change for you?